Hey, this is Les Carlsen, and you're listening to the Covenant Metal Show. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Hey guys, I am here with the one and only iconic Les Carlsen. Les, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Hey, I'm happy to finally be here, Dave.
Yeah, we've been trying to get this going for some time, huh?
It's going now.
Absolutely. And, first and foremost, we had Immortal Fest a little over a month ago. Mm-hmm. And you had featured, obviously, your solo material. And I really, really love it. And great performance. And I look forward to getting the album when it comes out. So, and we'll be playing a couple of tracks here. So I went to your website, lescarlsenmusic.com, and got some information here about you. And it says here that you were the lead in the Broadway musical Hair for 2 years.
Yeah, it was.
That had to be a lot of fun.
It was amazing fun. And it was really a wonderful foundational experience for my acting career and drama and just being on stage. Because when you do a show 8 times a week for 2 years, you get real used to being on stage and in front of people. So, the stage is sort of my living room now when I enter into it, as opposed to being something that I'm frightened of.
Yeah, I tried my hand at acting back in high school, and I was okay at it. I just never really pursued it. It says here your influences were Elvis Presley and the Beatles. And I love both myself. I'm a big Beatles fan, so
yeah.
So that's awesome. You grew up on that kind of music. Did you always gravitate towards rock and roll, or were you kind of into something else before, Elvis and the Beatles?
Yeah, actually, I was. I listened to what they call transistor radios. Back in the day.
I remember those.
Back in the day, transistor radios. I loved to just take them to bed with me and listen to the radio. So I definitely loved Elvis when I was very young. And I actually saw the Ed Sullivan Show, where they didn't allow the camera to go below his waist and that sort of thing.
Wow.
I was quite young at the time. But that's been a long time. So... And then later on I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. And that was I think that was the defining moment. When I saw them, I thought, you know what, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. I want to sing for a profession, and that's what I want to do. So, So the Beatles were great. Really, they really influenced me big time. Their music, it wasn't just the Beatles, it was the Rolling Stones, and just any group that came from England at that time was amazing to me. And back then, every band that came out sounded like themselves and no one else.
Yeah.
And also, as I got into that, I began to expand and look for the vocalists like Wilson Pickett, Otis Redding, James Brown, Sam Cooke. I also liked Jimi Hendrix, and I liked Janis Joplin. Oh my gosh, Rod Stewart.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I would just learn their music and sing along with them and try and get those inflections, and I kind of somehow developed this sort of a foundational thing there. But then I went through a period where I said, you know what? After I'd done cover bands and doing a lot of stuff like that, I thought, you know what? I don't want to hear anybody anymore. I want to find out who I am. Mm-hmm. I just want to sing and sound like me.
Right.
So hopefully that happened in Bloodgood.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like when you were listening to those great, iconic artists, if when you were singing, if you were trying to basically kind of, I don't want to use the word copy their voices, but kind of emulate it. And was it hard to find your voice, or was it just a long process? Or
I think that you're listening into their voices, you're listening to their attack, you're listening to how they fit into the track rhythmically, you're listening for expression, you're listening for song lyric and emotion and all of that. And then the spirit behind, singing, because singing is spirit and truth. And they were the foundational characters in my life there. But when I got born again, I realized that, hey, God has given me talents, and I just need to sing from my heart, my spirit, and my truth. And at that point, I was now a believer in Christ. And so I think that he allowed me to come out. It wasn't anything that I could really teach other than just speak to somebody. But people oftentimes get very distracted as players or singers because they're thinking too much about if I should be this kind of singer or if I should be that kind of singer or whatever. And I say, you know what? Just sing from your heart, from your spirit, from your soul, and let it go. Amen. So you go and you take vocal lessons and you do all those things, and that's all technical stuff. But Maestro always taught me, when you hit the stage, forget about practice, forget about the exercises, forget about the technique. Pour your guts out and do that. So that's what I did with Bloodgood in the studio and live for several years.
Wow. That's awesome. I'm going to remember that because I've sang in bands in the past, and I currently have a project with a friend of mine, and but there's always room for improvement. Says here your first band is called The Topics, and you guys basically like played high school gigs, and so that had to be a lot of fun. Your very first band. You're all excited, and even if it was just playing at high school, doing some high school gigs, just getting up there in front of people, and that had to be have a little bit of stage fright at first. And then and then it says later on you were in a band called Joshua. You started writing original songs, and there was an album released on Revelation Records, and the music was later remastered, and it was released under your name, Les Carlsen, 1971, and came out in 2019 on Girder Records. So how did that all come about? Did you have the masters, or someone else had the original masters?
No, that's why the actual record was never released. It was produced by Red Shepherd, and the executive producer was Michael Butler, who owned Hair. And Michael Butler had come and seen me perform as Claude and said, dude, I want to manage you.
Wow.
So I went, oh, okay. And I ended up putting together this group of guys from Seattle, and we called ourselves Joshua. We were doing, they were really, really great players at the time. I was actually touring with Hair and simultaneously putting the band together to do this album. And then I actually moved or stayed in a house in Hollywood with all the guys in the band, and we practiced in the bedroom or in the basement until we got the whole record, and then we recorded the record. After we recorded the record, they tried to sell the record to some major labels, and it didn't get sold. they said that the vocals were weak, but they weren't saying the lead vocal was weak. They were saying that there wasn't enough harmonies and backgrounds and answers. You know what I mean? It didn't have the vocal production.
Ah, okay.
And so anyway, the band sort of dispersed, and it never got released.
Wow.
So then, years later, basically what I had was I think it was a Memorex cassette of it, and I had it put on a disc. My son actually put it on a disc, a CD, and gave it to me for my birthday. And so then I took that and thought, well, it doesn't sound that great, but at least it's there. I mean, there was no way to get to the masters. They're gone, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the only thing I had was this little remnant of this album. And then I guess it was Greg Hayes that said, you know, well, let me hear that, and maybe we can make it. Maybe we could do something with it, you know. And then I said, okay, we'll give it to David Safiro, and he'll remaster it. He'll make it sound as good as he can make it sound, and we'll put it out. So it's amazing that it even exists, because it actually came from a Memorex cassette tape.
Isn't it amazing what they can do today with the technology? It just blows my mind. They could take something from so long ago, you know, and beef up the quality, and you wouldn't even know. They can make it sound like it, you know, was just recorded a month ago or something.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
So the cool thing about that, though, is there are some Bloodgood songs on that.
Really?
Well, they were, yeah, because I ended up, you know, I got in Bloodgood, and I think about the third album or so, we're looking around for new material, and or fourth album, and one of the songs was "It's All Right," which used to be called "Bad Credit." And,
oh wow!
But I originally wrote that in Joshua when I was 21 or 22 years old, and another song called "Changing Me" that I wrote when I was in Florida, and there was a clothing outfit that wanted to sponsor me when I was playing Claude in the Coconut Grove Playhouse, and there was a local clothing guys that wanted to give me an endorsement or whatever, and they wanted me to write a song. So I wrote this song, "Changing Me," and we recorded it, and it was on the radio, and it was, you know, I was this local celebrity back when I was 21 or 22, and, you know, life went on, and years later, I get into Bloodgood. I think it was Out of the Darkness. I said, well, maybe I'll look at this song, "Changing Me," that I wrote back then. And, yeah, so we redid it to glorify God. And, yeah, so those were two songs from 1971 that became songs on the Bloodgood albums.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I did not know that. Now I do.
And now so does everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Now this I think is amazing. I really like this because you know, being at Immortal Fest, it was a real blessing to see you up on stage with your wife Joyce, and the two of you together. I mean, my goodness, you know, beautiful voices, and you both, you know, harmonized so very well. And you had met your wife while you were in Hair on Broadway, and you guys had a little group for a while called the Carlsen Band. Yeah. And you guys did that in the early 80s, recorded 2 albums that were released outside of the US. Now, has there ever been any discussion or any ideas of maybe, you know, trying to re-release those and put them out here in the U.S.?
Yeah, there has been amongst Joyce and I, and maybe even Greg Hayes with Girder. Now, let me clarify. I was in the Broadway musical Hair, but I was in the, you know, I was in Seattle and I was in Miami, and I was in the first national touring company. So I was like the road show. Okay. They asked me to play it on Broadway. Afterwards, they wanted me to do it, and I actually refused it. So I never did it on Broadway. My understudy in Hair was Jeff Fenholt, And he was my understudy in Hair, and he auditioned for Jesus Christ Superstar. And he's the original Jesus Christ on Broadway, which I thought was kind of cool because Jeff was not much of an actor, really. He was a great, great, great singer, but he had gone there. So that, that was my ticket. I'd gone to Broadway and really I didn't like the idea of moving to New York and living in New York. I just wanted to not do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I had the offer and I turned it down.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah, it was the actual Broadway musical Hair, sanctioned by the producers from New York. And that's when they opened a lot of shows. Joyce, my wife, was in the Boston show of Hair. And when we met was at the bus and truck tour that started in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and at a college or something there. And that's when I first saw her and knew that I was in trouble.
And still in trouble all these years later, right?
The best mistake I ever made. I mean, she is incredible. And we've been together for about 51 years.
Wow. That's amazing. That is really amazing. And yeah, she's a very sweet lady. Absolutely. Yeah. Now, you had basically you kind of been done with music for a little while, and then you came to Christ and decided to use, music for you became your passion. Music ministry rather became your passion, and you wanted to use your music and your voice to now glorify God. Mm-hmm. And if you don't mind sharing with us, how did you come to Christ and when did that happen?
Okay, so I want to clarify some things because obviously I have a son. I had a son when I was 16. So Joyce is not his biological mother. And I was still in high school when he was born. I continued with my music, the topics. I ended up doing the dance circuits in Seattle area with a band called Front Page. And then I got into Hair. So I went on the road and I met Joyce. And so we my first wife and I just kind of looked at each other and said, let's just kind of dissolve this. We were very young when we got married. And we, so there was no hassle or no bitterness or anything. And Joyce and I raised Jeff together. I think she met him when he was maybe 5 or 6. And, so she had been his mother, stepmother all those years. And so getting down to how we got saved, Jeff was maybe 18, I think, 17, 18, when I first got saved, and he had an extensive metal collection, because the kid was into music. I mean, I don't know why. Probably because of me and Joyce, right? And he was just constantly, we were always into music. And Jeff was totally into music since he was real young, because that's what his dad did, And, but he was totally into these heavy metal bands, like Ronnie James Dio, Motley Crue, Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath, and he had this extensive collection. Well, when I got saved, my eyes were open to this. My ears and my eyes were open to this collection that he had, and I thought, oh, okay, that's pretty demonic. So I started praying that God would use me in some sort of musical entity that could glorify Christ through heavy metal. And I did it. I mean, I ran into Michael Bloodgood, and you guys know the history of that.
Yeah.
So just about the time I'd gotten that together, my son comes to me and says, yeah, there's a band called Stryper. Look at this. They're from California, and they're Christians. And I went, what? Wow, okay, because we thought we're the first Christian metal band on the planet, and realized God had actually raised up several metal bands at the same time all over the world. And turns out that my son actually got saved at the Bloodgood Stryper concert, or Stryper Bloodgood concert.
Wow. And
was led to the Lord by Timothy Gaines. So, praise God for heavy metal ministries, right?
That is, wow. That is great. That is really great.
So now Joyce and I got saved.
Mm-hmm.
We had a nightclub act, and we were quite popular in the Northwest. If you've seen the Trenches of Rock film, it mentions something to that effect. But we were. I mean, we were doing a theatrical rock dance show, and we were packing the clubs, and we were doing quite well. And we hired a keyboard player that came into the band, and we had never seen him in any of the musical circles up there. The reason was he was a Christian, so we didn't know anybody from that genre. Anyway, he got in our band, and he was so good. He looked great. He sang great. He had his gear. He was always ready for rehearsal. He knew the material. He was just the sweetest, nicest person I'd ever met in my life. And I was wondering why he was so different than anybody I'd ever met before. And when I asked him, he said it was because he had a relationship with Jesus. And I was like, okay, stop, I don't want to go there, And, but I realized, wow, I was so attracted to whatever he had. And when I realized it was Jesus, I backed up, and I thought there must be something to Jesus.
Mm.
And so the same thing was kind of happening in Joyce's life. But we were hiding it from each other because I didn't want to tell her that I was becoming a Christian. And she didn't want to tell me she was becoming a Christian. So we were kind of hiding that for a little bit. And one day we sort of met in the kitchen. It was probably 1 or 2 in the afternoon because we didn't go to bed till 5 in the morning. And I said to her, Jesus was God in the flesh. And she said, yeah, I know. What are we going to do about it? And because we'd read this book, More Than a Carpenter, that Don had given us. And we went back in the bedroom and got on our knees and asked Jesus into our heart. We wept like babies. I looked at her. She was a different person. She looked at me. I was a different person. I went and bought Bibles and brought her one, and I had one, and we just started reading. Now, we're still in the clubs, doing Billy Idol and everything. And but we read the Bible. I'd wake up and all I wanted to do was read the Bible. And that's all she would do all day. Then we'd go back to the clubs. And we got saved that way. We didn't get saved in a church or at a Christian rock concert. We got saved out of a bar because there was a Christian that had, the calling of God in his life to go in there and play in this heathen group long enough for Les and Joyce to get saved. And I ended up getting in a band called Bloodgood, and you all know about what that band did. So thank you, Don, for your obedience and not listening to other Christians that said, no, you have no business in the devil's den. Da, 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 da.
And you guys, Bloodgood, you guys were, obviously one of the bands that, faced opposition, from the world and from the church, both alike.
Yeah.
And, and I remember myself, when I was a teenager, there was this church down the road from my house, and they had this thing on the weekends during the summer where, in the church, they had this big arcade room with the arcade video games, and it was all free, and they had snacks and whatnot, and you could buy sodas and chips, and the kids used to go and just hang out there, and it was a lot of fun. Well, halfway through the thing, what they would do is they turned all the video games off and closed the concession stand. They made us all go outside and sit in the basketball court, and the pastor of this church would preach to us. But it was always the same thing, and they didn't allow you to wear t-shirts that had any kind of image on it. Like one girl, they made her leave because she had a t-shirt that had Mickey Mouse on it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Mickey Mouse, he's a cartoon. He's not even real, but, so I remember one time the pastor had said, rock and roll is of the devil and rock music is evil and stuff like that. And I happened to mention, I said, well, what about the band Striper? I said, yeah, they play rock music, but they glorify Jesus with that. You know, I said, they're singing about God, they're singing about Christ, and he's, oh, no, that's wrong, and rock and roll, I don't care what it is, all rock and roll is evil. And needless to say, I never went back there. I was like, wow, this he's just got that, you know, that kind of view about all that stuff. But was there any kind of you know,
excuse me, I'm sorry, I mean, the scripture says what was meant for evil God will turn to good. Mm-hmm. And you're going, that almost seems opposite. It almost seems like what was meant for good really was not good. What he was saying to you is that you couldn't wear a shirt, you couldn't wear this, or you couldn't talk about anybody doing any other kind of music other than what they were listening to. And you're going, that didn't help the kingdom of God at all. It probably created more rebels and people running from Jesus, and it makes no sense at all. Now they, in their heart of hearts, were trying their best. But you know what? My best is not good enough, and my best is not enough to attract somebody to the King of Kings. His blood is good enough.
Amen.
And powerful enough. And that it's him that draws people. It's not us. We point to him, and he does that. He does the work. When men and women get in the way of God, in the name of God, it doesn't have a very good effect.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all.
So I say, you know, I'm sure they were trying and all that, and they are forgiven, I'm sure. And they probably even have changed their hearts and minds, because God will do that. If you're following Jesus, he will do what he has to do to get you to where you have to be, like him, sort of. So there have been changes over these past several years, because the fruit of what God called has happened, and they've seen the truth in that. So yeah, praise God. I'm glad you made it, dude, after all that trauma. Yeah,
absolutely. So you know, moving forward here, you, like we said, you're working on your new solo album. And do you have a title for that yet, or an ETA on when it will be released? Now, I know that you had the Kickstarter going. Are you gonna have the Kickstarter? You know, are you gonna, what's the word I'm looking for? Are you gonna run that again?
Kickstarter?
Yeah.
Oh no, it happened, and the album is going to be released here pretty soon.
Oh,
it's
good.
Going to be called He's Coming. We have an album cover. We're working on all those sorts of things. Scott Waters is actually going to help put that stuff together.
He's amazing.
He's amazing. He's a wonderful man. And we are still mixing. The album's being mixed right now by Wyatt Oates from Madison Records out of Atlanta. Yeah, it's almost finished. And the feedback that I've gotten from several people, and I mean people that are in the industry and people that you would know, have said, oh my gosh, they're very excited about it. So I'm happy. I just want to reach people for Jesus. And,
Amen. Yeah, I love what I've heard so far. You know, the singles that have been released.
So Dave, there's more. I mean, there's a song that Oz and I wrote called Judas is Dead. Oz Fox plays all the instruments on it, and I wrote the melody and lyrics, and it's a theatrical piece. I think that's going to shock some folks. And I wrote some stuff with Craig Church and Paul Jackson, and I wrote some things by myself, like the Jesus Freak Show and I Want to Know You. I wrote, well, Jackson helped me a little bit with that, but yeah, I actually learned to play guitar during the pandemic, and so I'm actually playing rhythm on some of the tracks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and that really was not my call. That was their call. They said, no, we like these tracks, and you need to put them on the record, because they inspired us, and they sound great. And so, because I was like, no, I wasn't going to play, but they said, no, it's cool. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear it. Absolutely. And one last thing is now, gosh, I believe it's coming out October 28th. I may have the date wrong, and forgive me if I do, but Rox Records is reissuing on CD, Gold Disc Edition, the live albums, the Bloodgood live albums, Alive in America and Shaken the World, volumes 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And, I'm very excited for that. I don't have those, so I will be getting them. So
that you understand, those are Frontline products. They belong to Frontline, and they have the right to license those. I just found out about it this morning myself.
Oh.
And, I'm excited about it because they were great. They're really, really a great project. And I'm glad that there's a new generation and that gets to hear it. So, go Bill Rocks in the game.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, Les, I appreciate you taking time out of your evening to hang out with me and chat and to be on the show. And, and God bless you. God bless your endeavors and your family and everything you do, brother.
You know what? I'm so grateful for that. And I just want to encourage everyone that's out there to understand, make it simple. Really make it simple. Just love God with everything you got. Just love Him with everything you got. Don't prejudge yourself. Don't go through a bunch of fear. Just do what He said. Love God with all your heart, strength, soul, and mind. And your neighbor is yourself. Pretty much sums it up. Okay, let's not make this complicated. Have a relationship with the Creator of the universe. Go there. You're qualified to step into the throne room and ask for anything. Understanding, wisdom would be a good thing to ask for. Probably the best thing to ask for. And relationship with Him. And just relax. Love God. Be good to people. Be good to each other. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. All right. Much love, my friend.